HBO's The Last of Us just dropped. I absolutely loved the title card, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could recreate that in After Effects. And I'm giving myself one workday to do it. Now, the series cost close to $10 million per episode. I assume at least half of that went into this 10-second scene, so I might not get it to quite that level, but I do want it good enough that it could be used effectively for a parody. Like The Last of Bus, or The Last of Truss, maybe? Look, I'll work on a better one for the final reveal. The biggest challenge would be creating these veins, which are constantly growing, dying, and then revealing the text. If I can approximate something like this, it's possible that I can make the rest of it work. I suspect they would have used a 3D simulation of sorts to create these, but I don't know Houdini or other fancy pants 3D software. Humble After Effects is my workhorse, so I'm gonna have to get creative. I could do this using trim paths on strokes in After Effects or some very complex masking, but there is a plugin that could really save me a lot of time. Autofill from Plugin Everything can procedurally fill in complex shapes, and I've never had a reason to try it, until now. It does cost 50 clams, but compared to HBO's 90 million, I can justify it.
You got anything else?
Now, I needed some veins to work with. I searched for some veiny image textures to save me drawing them by hand, and found this one on Unsplash. I edited it in Photoshop a bit to make it resemble fungal veins a bit more, put that in its own comp in After Effects, and applied autofill to that comp. I placed where I wanted the spread to originate from, and after tweaking a few settings, it was looking like growing veins. But the shape just wasn't veiny enough. Not as vascular and organic as I wanted it. So I went back into Photoshop and adjusted it some more. Essentially, hand drawing a lot of the veins I was hoping to avoid, but it was looking better. The timing was a bit too boring and linear though, so I pre-comped it again, enabled time remapping, and added a slight speed ramp, so it starts faster, then slows down towards the end. Now, I needed them to fade out as they were drawn on, so they start pale, fade to red, and then disappear. I'll add color later, so for the moment I just need it to fade to black. I put those animated veins in a new comp and figured out a way to mimic a gradient, which was to add a duplicate of the animated veins that was a bit darker and had that play over the top, slightly delayed, so it would appear to get darker the longer it was on screen. Then I made a bunch of copies for it to look smooth. I do suspect there is a better way to do this, so if you've got another way, let me know in the comments. And while you're there, every like this video receives goes to help clickers learn how to double click. Now that my veins were looking respectable, I could start building the background. I started with the dark solid, with a darker vignette, and a subtle texture. Then I threw on that animated vein comp. I recolored it using the CC toner effect, which maps new colors over your existing ones. I also added the layer styles inner glow and drop shadow to make it look a bit more 3D. Then I duplicated it a few times and moved it around so the new veins were constantly sprouting up and fading away. The veins were looking a bit too similar, so I made another vein texture in Photoshop that was mainly veining in one direction, so I had another vein option. I also made more duplicates that faded out a bit slower, so some of the redness stayed on screen for a bit longer. Great, now it needs text. I pre-comped the logo and got to work figuring out how I was going to reveal it. The best solution I found was to stack up some of those vein comps to just about fill the area, and then put the text layer on top of all of them with its blending mode set to stencil alpha, so it cuts out everything that is not within its alpha channel. There were still some gaps, so I grabbed an ink reveal matte and used that to fill in the holes. Then sneakily faded on the logo over everything at the end. The last thing was to add this to our main comp and apply some effects on top, which always brings everything together to feel cohesive. Now before I do want to shout out Elastic, the studio who made the original opening credits with this spectacular 3D sequence as well. They did a magnificent job. They really are some of the best in the business. You'll already know their other work. Recreating something and slapping it up on YouTube takes just a tiny fraction of the skill of developing the idea, refining it, getting it approved, and executing it. I certainly don't want to take away anything from their tremendous work. I like to make these title recreations for my own amusement and to show that you can create some pretty impressive stuff with some very accessible tools. Elastic did an incredible job. They are truly inspiring. We wouldn't be here otherwise. Now, onto the final effects. On an adjustment layer on top of everything, I added some slight chromatic aberration using Quick Chromatic Aberration 3, which is a free plugin from Plugin Everything Again, who also made Autofill. Now, they didn't sponsor this, they just happened to make some very convenient plugins for the end of the world. Then a slight lens warping using CC Lens, and a transform increasing the scale to hide those warped edges, a camera lens blur to rack focus and blur out the first few seconds, and some very slight film grain using Noise HLS Auto. Here it is before and after the effects. And I was done.
I don't have friends, I got family.
Look, that one's not bad. You gotta give me that. Surely. Now, it's certainly not as smooth, detailed, or as vascular as the original, despite my best attempts, but not bad for a day's work. I'm pretty happy with the result. What do you think? And immediately after finishing this and posting a teaser, I learned there was another After Effects plugin designed specifically to simulate this exact type of organic veiny growth, which doesn't frustrate me in the slightest. If you want to see me tackle another great title animation, you can check out this next video. I'll see you there.